It was a dark and stormy night when a group of 6 college students decided to throw a house party at the abandoned mansion on Holloway Street. The house had been empty for years, and the students had heard rumors about the terrible tragedy that had occurred there. However, none of them believed in the supernatural, and they were all eager to have a wild night and prove their bravery to one another. The group consisted of Sarah, the studious one; Jack, the charismatic jokester; Emily, the shy introvert; Mark, the athletic jock; Katie, the drama queen; and Tom, the tech-savvy genius. They each had their own reasons for wanting to attend the party, but they all had one thing in common: they wanted to experience the thrill of the unknown. As they approached the decrepit mansion, a feeling of unease settled over the group. The massive iron gate creaked open, revealing the overgrown garden and the imposing silhouette of the house. Lightning flashed, illuminating the eerie scene and sending a shiver down their spines. Undeterred, they pressed on, and soon found themselves standing before the massive front door. Jack, eager to prove his courage, was the first to step forward and push the door open. As the heavy door groaned, they hesitated for a moment before entering the dusty foyer. The house was in complete disarray, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and broken furniture scattered throughout the rooms. They quickly set about cleaning up the main living area, determined to make it suitable for their party. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The storm outside raged, and the old house seemed to come alive with strange noises and odd happenings. Doors slammed shut, windows rattled, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. Despite their unease, the students continued to drink and dance, doing their best to ignore the unsettling atmosphere. That is until Emily disappeared. Emily had gone to the restroom, and when she didn't return after a while, Sarah went to check on her. She found the bathroom empty and heard faint, distant cries coming from somewhere within the house. Panicked, she alerted the others, and they began searching for their missing friend. They split into 2 groups. Jack and Katie went upstairs, while Mark, Tom, and Sarah searched the ground floor. The house seemed to have endless rooms, and with each one they entered, their fear grew. Meanwhile, Jack and Katie stumbled upon a locked door at the end of a long, dark hallway. Intrigued, they tried to force it open, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated and desperate to find Emily, they decided to move on and continue their search. Downstairs, Mark, Tom, and Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a bookcase that led to a damp, dimly lit basement. They hesitated but eventually descended the creaking wooden stairs, hoping to find Emily. As they searched the basement, they found a room filled with old newspaper clippings and photographs. The articles detailed a gruesome murder that had taken place in the house decades earlier. A young woman had been brutally killed by an unknown assailant, and her body was never found. Feeling a renewed sense of urgency, they continued to search the basement. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash from upstairs and hurried back up to find Jack and Katie standing over a broken vase, their faces pale with terror. "Someone, or something, is in this house with us," Jack whispered, his voice shaking. Determined to find Emily and get out of the house as quickly as possible, they continued their search, now more cautious and aware of their surroundings. They systematically checked each room, making sure to stick together, as they didn't want anyone else to disappear. As they made their way to the attic, they heard a faint scratching noise coming from behind a locked door. The group exchanged glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. Tom, using his technical skills, managed to pick the lock, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark and dusty room. The group hesitated before entering, but a quiet sob from within the room prompted them to push forward. They found Emily in the far corner, bound and gagged. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her face was streaked with tears. Relieved, they quickly untied her, and she began to recount her terrifying ordeal. She explained that she had been grabbed from behind and dragged to the attic by a hooded figure. She couldn't see their face, but their grip was strong and unrelenting. Now reunited, the group knew they had to leave the house immediately. They made their way back down to the main floor, moving as quietly as possible to avoid alerting their captor. As they approached the front door, they heard footsteps behind them. They turned to see a tall, hooded figure emerging from the shadows. The figure was dressed in black, its face obscured by the darkness. Panic set in, and they scrambled to escape the house. Once outside, they sprinted towards the iron gate, adrenaline pumping through their veins. As they reached the gate, they realized it was locked. Desperate, Mark attempted to scale the tall iron fence, but the hooded figure was closing in. Just as the figure was about to reach them, a bright flash of lightning illuminated the night sky, momentarily blinding the hooded assailant. Seizing the opportunity, Tom managed to unlock the gate, and the group rushed through, slamming it shut behind them. Their hearts racing, they didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their dorms. Exhausted and shaken, they vowed never to speak of that night again. The following day, the police searched the house on Holloway Street, but found no trace of the hooded figure. The only evidence they uncovered was a hidden room filled with newspaper clippings and photographs of the unsolved murder that had occurred decades earlier. In the weeks following the harrowing experience, the friends tried their best to return to a sense of normalcy. However, the memory of that night hung over them like a dark cloud, casting a shadow on their once carefree lives. The police continued their investigation, but were unable to find any concrete leads. With each passing day, the house on Holloway Street seemed to grow more sinister in the minds of the six friends. Soon, they started to notice strange occurrences in their everyday lives. They would hear faint whispers when they were alone, catch fleeting glimpses of a hooded figure in the shadows, and feel an unsettling sensation of being watched. One by one, the friends began to unravel, their fear consuming them. Sarah, who had once been focused on her studies, found herself unable to concentrate, her grades slipping as she became obsessed with researching unsolved murders in the area. Jack, the charismatic jokester, lost his sense of humor, withdrawing from social events and spending his days in a state of constant paranoia. Emily, introvert, was hit the hardest. After her traumatic ordeal, she refused to leave her dorm room, plagued by nightmares and jumping at the slightest sound. The group tried to support her, but their own fears and uncertainties made it difficult to provide the comfort she needed. The friends decided to confront their fears head-on, hoping to bring an end to their torment. They made a plan to return to the house on Holloway Street one last time, determined to uncover the truth behind the hooded figure and find a way to put an end to their haunting. On the anniversary of their terrifying experience, they gathered outside the iron gate, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. They broke into the house once more, armed with flashlights and a sense of grim determination. As they explored the house, they discovered more hidden rooms and passages, each more unsettling than the last. It became clear that someone had been living in the house, conducting twisted experiments and gathering information on unsolved murders. In the depths of the house, they stumbled upon a horrifying revelation. The hooded figure was not a ghost or a supernatural entity, but a deranged individual obsessed with recreating the unsolved murder that had taken place decades earlier. The figure had been stalking them ever since that night, using their fear and paranoia to manipulate them. The friends confronted the hooded figure, their fear replaced by a newfound strength and resolve. In a desperate struggle, they managed to subdue their tormentor and reveal his face. To their shock, they recognized him as a fellow student, a quiet loner who had gone unnoticed in their midst. The police were called, and the hooded figure was arrested, charged with kidnapping, stalking, and attempted murder. As the officers led him away, the friends stood together outside the house on Holloway Street, their nightmare finally over. In the years that followed, the friends moved on with their lives, but the memories of that terrifying ordeal would stay with them forever. They had faced their fears and survived, and though their lives were forever changed, they knew they would always have each other to rely on. The house on Holloway Street was eventually demolished, but the chilling story of what had transpired there lived on, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places.
It was a warm summer evening, and the sun was just starting to set. I was walking towards a house on the edge of town where a party was being held. The house belonged to a guy named Max, who was known for throwing the wildest parties in town. I was excited to go to the party because I knew it was going to be one to remember. As I approached the house, I could hear the music thumping inside. People were laughing and shouting, and the air was thick with the smell of alcohol and cigarette smoke. I pushed my way through the crowd, making my way to the kitchen where the drinks were being served. It wasn't long before I had a red plastic cup in my hand, filled to the brim with some kind of fruity punch. I took a sip and immediately felt the warm, sweet liquid course through my veins. The music was loud, the room was hot, and I was having a great time. But as the night wore on, something began to feel off. The music became louder, the crowd more raucous, and the air heavier with smoke. I began to feel uneasy, as if something bad was going to happen. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Then, as if on cue, the lights went out. The entire house was plunged into darkness, and the music stopped. The silence was deafening. People began to shout and scream, and I felt a surge of panic rise in my chest. What was happening? Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. But what I saw made me wish they had stayed off. The room was covered in blood. It was everywhere, on the walls, on the floor, on people's clothes. I screamed and tried to run, but the crowd had become a mob, and I was pushed and pulled in all directions. As I fought my way toward the front door, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was a girl, standing in the corner, her face twisted into a grotesque expression of fear. She was covered in blood, and her clothes were torn. I tried to reach out to her, but she disappeared before my eyes. I made it to the front door, but it was locked. Panic rose in my chest. What was going on? I turned around and saw Max, the host of the party, standing in the center of the room holding a knife. He was covered in blood, and his eyes were wild and manic. "I told you this was going to be a party to remember," he said, his voice low and menacing. And I meant it. I tried to back away, but Max advanced on me, the knife glinting in the light. I knew I had to get away. I turned and ran towards the back of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. As I ran, I heard the sound of Max's footsteps behind me. I knew I had to find a place to hide. I burst into a room and locked the door behind me. The room was dark, but I could see the outline of a bed in the corner. I crawled underneath it, my heart beating so loudly, I thought it would burst out of my chest. I heard Max enter the room, his footsteps slow and deliberate. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't find me, but he did. He stopped in front of the bed and knelt down, peering underneath. I saw his wild, crazed eyes staring back at me. "You can't hide from me," he said, his voice low and menacing. And then he lunged, grabbing my ankle with a vice-like grip. I screamed and kicked, trying to break free, but he was too strong. He pulled me out from under the bed, his face twisted into a demonic snarl. "You thought you could escape, didn't you?" he sneered. "But you can't run from me. You're mine now." I felt a wave of terror wash over me as he dragged me out of the room and down a dark hallway. I didn't know where he was taking me, but I knew it couldn't be good. We finally arrived at a room at the end of the hallway, and he pushed me inside. The room was small and cramped, and the air was thick with the smell of death. I could barely see anything in the darkness, but I could feel Max's presence looming over me. "You're going to be my new plaything," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I'm going to have so much fun with you." I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin as he advanced towards me. I knew I had to do something, anything to get away. I looked around the room for something to defend myself with, but there was nothing. But then I saw something glinting in the darkness. It was a broken piece of glass from a shattered mirror on the wall. I reached out and grabbed it, my heart pounding in my chest. Max advanced towards me, his eyes glinting in the darkness, but I was ready for him. I lunged forward, slashing at his face with the broken glass. He screamed in pain and stumbled back, his hands clutching his bleeding face. I took the opportunity to run, bursting out of the room and down the hallway. I could hear Max's footsteps pounding after me, but I didn't stop. I ran out of the house and into the night, not stopping, until I had put several blocks between myself and that terrible place. I collapsed on the side of the road, gasping for breath. I didn't know what had happened or why Max had done what he did. All I knew was that I had narrowly escaped with my life. The police arrived a short time later, and I told them everything. They searched the house and found Max's lifeless body in the small room where he had taken me. It turned out that he had been a psychopath with a long history of violent behavior. The party had been a ruse to lure people into his trap. The memory of that night still haunts me, and I can never forget the terror I felt at the hands of a madman. But it taught me an important lesson. You can never be too careful, and you can never know what kind of darkness is hiding just around the corner. Amelia was thrilled when she received an invitation to a party at a modern and fancy mansion. She knew that everyone who was anyone would be there, and she couldn't wait to be part of it. As she walked up to the house, Amelia was in awe of its sleek and sophisticated design. The mansion was made of glass and steel, with clean lines and an almost futuristic feel. The host greeted her warmly at the door and showed her around, pointing out all the amazing features of the place. There was a state-of-the-art sound system, a beautiful swimming pool, and a movie theater with plush chairs and a giant screen. The party was in full swing when Amelia arrived. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and everyone was having a great time. She mingled with the other guests, trying to catch up with old friends and make new ones. But as the night went on, strange things started to happen. The music would stop abruptly and then start again at a different tempo. The lights would flicker and dim, and Amelia could hear whispers and laughter coming from seemingly nowhere. At first, she thought it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but as it continued, she started to feel more and more uneasy. Amelia decided to explore the house, but the more she walked, the more the rooms seemed to change. They became darker, the shadows seemed to stretch, and she could hear the sound of footsteps following her, but when she turned around, no one was there. She tried to tell herself that it was just her imagination, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. As she made her way through the mansion, she came across a room that was completely empty except for a large ornate mirror. She had never seen a mirror like this before. It was surrounded by a gold filigree with a large red gem set in the center. She couldn't resist the temptation to take a look, and as she gazed into the glass, she saw a reflection that was not her own. The reflection was of a twisted, distorted version of herself, with glowing eyes and a sinister grin. Amelia was so startled that she stumbled back, and the door slammed shut behind her. She was trapped in the room, and the mirrors all around her started to crack and shatter, revealing a horde of terrifying creatures that swarmed towards her. Amelia was paralyzed with fear. She tried to scream for help, but no sound came out of her mouth. The creatures were getting closer and closer, their razor-sharp claws reaching out for her. She was sure that she was going to die, that this was the end. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the creatures vanished, and she was alone in the room once more. Amelia was shaking, her heart racing, as she tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped, with no way out. She sat down on the floor, trying to calm her breathing and think of a way out. That's when she noticed a small inscription on the floor, written in delicate script. It read, "Your fears are but a reflection of your mind." Amelia didn't understand what it meant, but she felt a strange sense of comfort in the words. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, trying to push away her fears and think clearly. When she opened her eyes again, the room had changed. The mirrors were gone, the door was open, and she was free to leave. She stumbled out into the hall, still in shock from what had just happened. The party was still in full swing, and no one seemed to have noticed her absence or the strange events that had taken place in the room. Amelia tried to act normal, but she was still shaking with fear. She decided to leave the party and go home, unable to shake the feeling of unease that lingered with her. As Amelia continued her journey home, her mind raced with questions about what had happened at the mansion. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface of the party. The strange occurrences she had witnessed in the mansion felt like they were connected, but she couldn't quite piece together how. As she walked through the quiet streets, she felt a cold breeze whip through her hair. The night seemed darker, and she felt like she was being watched. Amelia quickened her pace, but the feeling of unease only grew stronger. She couldn't stop thinking about the strange mirror and the twisted reflection it had shown her. The red gem in the center of the mirror seemed to call out to her, as if it had some hidden power. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important about the mirror that she had missed. Amelia was lost in thought when she heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It could just be a stray animal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She took a deep breath and decided to investigate. As she approached the bushes, she heard a low growl. Her heart racing, she slowly pulled back the branches, and her eyes widened in terror. There in the darkness were the same creatures that had appeared in the mirrors. They were snarling and snapping, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Amelia stumbled back, her mind reeling. What were these creatures? Were they connected to the mansion and the strange events that had taken place there? She knew that she needed to find answers, but she had no idea where to start. As she continued her journey home, she couldn't help but feel that she was being followed. Every shadow seemed to hold some hidden danger, and she felt like she was being watched from every corner. Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she was in danger, and she knew that she needed to stay alert if she wanted to survive whatever was coming next. The inscription on the floor of the mirror room continued to haunt her. Your fears are but a reflection of your mind. As a college student, I was always up for a good time. So when my friend invited me to a party at an old, abandoned house on the outskirts of town, I jumped at the chance. Despite rumors that the place was haunted, I didn't believe in ghosts and thought it would be a fun, exciting adventure. When we arrived, the house was even more decrepit than I had imagined. The paint was peeling, the windows were boarded up, and the front door hung on its hinges. My friend pushed it open, and we stepped inside. The musty smell of decay filled my nostrils, and I felt a chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off and followed my friend further into the house. The inside of the house was even more unsettling than the outside. Cobwebs hung from every surface. The floorboards creaked ominously underfoot, but I tried to ignore it and focus on the party. I didn't want to be the only one feeling scared, so I made my way to the kitchen and grabbed a beer to calm my nerves. The party started off well, with everyone in high spirits and a little bit drunk. We laughed, danced, and drank to our heart's content. The atmosphere was lively, and it felt like a much-needed escape from the stress of college life. I started to let my guard down and enjoy myself, feeling grateful to be among friends in such a fun and carefree environment. It was then that I noticed something truly strange. The other partygoers seemed off, their eyes were blank, and they were acting erratically and aggressively. I tried to engage in conversation with one of them, but they didn't respond. Instead, they just stared at me with blank expressions. I felt a creeping sense of dread settle in my chest. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. In the darkness, I heard a loud, panicked scream that echoed through the house. I bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The screams grew louder, and I could hear things being smashed and broken, as if a fight had broken out. I was paralyzed with fear, and I felt like I was being suffocated by the thick, musty air. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the lights came back on. I was alone in the room, and the other partygoers were gone. I stumbled outside, gasping for breath and looking around for anyone else, but the house was deserted. I ran all the way back to my dorm room, my heart pounding in my chest, not stopping until I had locked the door behind me. That night at the party house was a terrifying experience that I would never forget. I later found out that the party had gotten out of hand and evolved into a destructive and violent brawl. The police had been called, and everyone fled the scene, including my friend and the other partygoers. As I tried to process the events of that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else had been at play. I couldn't explain why the other partygoers had acted so strangely, or why the house had felt so eerie and unsettling. It was then that I remembered a local urban legend about the abandoned house, one that I had dismissed as just another ghost story. According to the legend, the house had once been owned by a wealthy family who had fallen on hard times. In a desperate attempt to regain their fortune, they had turned to dark magic and made a deal with a demon. The demon had granted them their wish, but at a terrible cost. The family had been cursed, and their souls were now trapped within the walls of the house, doomed to haunt it for all eternity. As I dug deeper into the legend, I discovered that there had been several reports of strange occurrences at the house over the years. Unexplained noises, sightings of ghostly figures, and even rumors of possessions. The more I read, the more convinced I became that something supernatural had been at play that night. Despite my fear, I found myself drawn back to the house, determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. I enlisted the help of a local paranormal investigator, and together we spent the night at the abandoned house, armed with cameras, EMF detectors, and other ghost hunting equipment. As we explored the house, we encountered all manner of strange occurrences, doors slamming shut on their own, objects moving by themselves, and ghostly voices whispering in the darkness. But it was when we reached the attic that we found the source of the curse. There, hidden behind a wall, we discovered a secret room filled with all manner of occult artifacts, candles, incense, pentagrams, and other items used in dark magic rituals. It was clear that whoever had lived in the house before had been deeply involved in the occult, and had likely summoned the demon that had cursed them. As we left the house, I felt a sense of closure and satisfaction, knowing that I had uncovered the truth behind the legend. But kids, don't try that at home.
In the small town of Autumn Hollow, residents prided themselves on their tight-knit community and the picturesque beauty of their surroundings. However, beneath the surface, whispers of strange occurrences and eerie tales were passed down through generations. These stories were never spoken of openly, but they lingered in the back of everyone's mind, casting a subtle shadow over the town. Emma, a 22-year-old college student, had recently returned to Autumn Hollow after spending several years studying in a distant city. She had always been intrigued by the town's chilling legends, but she had never given them much thought. That was until one fateful night when she decided to attend a local bar's music night with her best friend Lisa. As they enjoyed the live music and shared drinks, Emma was approached by a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, with a gaunt face and piercing eyes that seemed to bore into her very soul. He introduced himself as Mr. Blackwood and claimed to be a collector of oddities and curiosities from around the world. He asked Emma if she had any interest in the supernatural, and despite feeling uneasy, she found herself drawn into a conversation with him. As the night wore on, Emma realized that her phone was missing. Panicking, she searched the bar, the bathrooms, and the table where she and Lisa had been sitting, but her phone was nowhere to be found. In desperation, she borrowed Lisa's phone and dialed her number, hoping someone would answer. To her surprise, the call was answered after 2 rings. A low, raspy giggle echoed through the line, sending shivers down her spine before the call abruptly disconnected. She tried calling again, but there was no response. Defeated and unnerved, Emma decided to call it a night and head home. Upon arriving home, Emma was shocked to find her phone lying on her nightstand, exactly where she had left it before going out. Confused and frightened, she couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. She confided in Lisa about the unsettling events of the night and the eerie phone call she had received. Intrigued and concerned, Lisa suggested they do some research on Mr. Blackwood and the town's supernatural history. Their search led them to a series of articles and records that chronicle the town's haunted past, including stories of unexplained disappearances and strange happenings linked to an enigmatic figure known as the Sinister Caller. As they dug deeper, Emma and Lisa discovered that the Sinister Caller was believed to be a malevolent spirit that had tormented the people of Autumn Hollow for centuries. The spirit was said to possess the ability to manipulate technology, using it to prey on unsuspecting victims and lure them into dangerous situations. The more they learned, the more Emma became convinced that her encounter with Mr. Blackwood and the strange phone call were somehow connected to the Sinister Caller. Determined to uncover the truth and protect their town from the spirit's malevolent influence, Emma and Lisa devised a plan to confront Mr. Blackwood and put an end to the Sinister Caller's reign of terror once and for all. Little did they know, their investigation would lead them down a dark and twisted path that would test their courage and their friendship as they faced the terrifying truth behind Autumn Hollow's most chilling legend. Emma and Lisa spent the following days gathering information about Mr. Blackwood and the Sinister Caller. They visited the local library, where they found newspaper articles detailing strange occurrences and chilling eyewitness accounts. They also spoke with elderly residents who shared whispered tales of the sinister spirit's influence on the town. One evening, as they were discussing their findings, Emma received a text message from an unknown number. The message read, "I see you've been looking for me. You're getting closer, but be careful what you wish for." A cold shiver ran down her spine, and she knew without a doubt that the Sinister Caller was watching them. Undeterred by the warning, Emma and Lisa decided to confront Mr. Blackwood directly. They discovered that he lived in an old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, surrounded by an air of mystery and unease. Gathering their courage, the two friends approached the imposing house, determined to put an end to the terror that had haunted Autumn Hollow for centuries. As they entered the mansion, they found themselves in a dimly lit hallway lined with strange artifacts and bizarre curiosities from around the world. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, and they could feel the malevolent presence of the Sinister Caller growing stronger. Following the unnerving sound of a faint giggle, they discovered Mr. Blackwood in a hidden chamber, surrounded by an array of ancient technology and arcane symbols. He greeted them with a sinister smile, confirming their suspicions that he was the one responsible for summoning the Sinister Caller. "You're too late," he taunted. "The Sinister Caller has already chosen its next victim. There's nothing you can do to stop it." Enraged and desperate to save their town, Emma and Lisa confronted Mr. Blackwood, demanding that he reveal the secret to banishing the malevolent spirit. As they argued, a sudden realization struck Emma. The spirit's power was tied to the ancient technology that surrounded them. Mustering all her courage, she grabbed a nearby artifact, a strange metallic device, and smashed it to the ground. The room began to tremble as the Sinister Caller's power faltered, and Mr. Blackwood's face contorted with rage and fear. With each destroyed artifact, the spirit's grip on the town weakened, until finally, the room fell silent and the malevolent presence vanished. Mr. Blackwood, now powerless, crumpled to the floor, defeated. As they left the mansion, Emma and Lisa knew that they had succeeded in banishing the Caller and freeing their town from its dark influence. News of their victory spread quickly, and the townspeople hailed them as heroes. Life in Autumn Hollow went on peacefully for several years. Emma had finished college and had decided to settle in her hometown, working as a freelance writer and researcher. Lisa, on the other hand, had pursued her dream of becoming a private investigator, traveling frequently but always returning to Autumn Hollow as her home base. One evening, as Emma and Lisa were catching up at their favorite local coffee shop, they noticed a newcomer in town. A young woman named Violet seemed to have taken an interest in the town's history and its mysterious past. Intrigued, Emma and Lisa decided to introduce themselves and find out more about her. Violet shared that she was a paranormal investigator, and she had come to Autumn Hollow after hearing rumors of strange occurrences in the area. She wanted to delve deeper into the legend of the Sinister Caller, despite the spirit's apparent banishment years earlier. At first, Emma and Lisa were skeptical. They believed that they had rid the town of a malevolent spirit and its dark influence for good. However, as they listened to Violet's stories of unexplained phenomena and eerie happenings in other parts of the country, they couldn't help but wonder if they had truly vanquished the sinister caller, or if it had simply been biding its time. Determined to protect their town and ensure the sinister caller's defeat, Emma, Lisa, and Violet decided to join forces and investigate any lingering traces of the spirit's presence. They revisited Mr. Blackwood's now abandoned mansion, searching for clues that could lead them to the heart of the mystery. As they explored the decrepit building, they stumbled upon a hidden room that had been sealed off since their last encounter with the sinister caller. Inside, they discovered a collection of ancient manuscripts and cryptic writings detailing the spirit's true origins and the means to banish it permanently. The trio spent weeks poring over the manuscripts, deciphering the texts, and gathering the necessary components for a powerful ritual that would ensure the sinister caller's complete eradication. They knew that they were facing a formidable adversary, and they had to prepare for a battle unlike any they had ever faced before. On a stormy night, with the wind howling and rain lashing against the windows, Emma, Lisa, and Violet gathered in the heart of Autumn Hollow to perform the ritual. As they chanted the ancient incantations, they felt the air around them crackle with energy, and the oppressive presence of the sinister caller grew stronger. The spirit materialized before them, a swirling mass of darkness and malevolence that threatened to consume everything in its path. With their hearts pounding in their chests, the trio focused their combined strength and determination, channeling it into the ritual as they fought to banish the sinister caller once and for all. In a climactic battle of wills, the sinister caller's power began to wane, and the darkness that had threatened to engulf them receded. With a final desperate scream, the spirit was cast into the void, banished from the world of the living forever. As the storm cleared and dawn broke over Autumn Hollow, Emma, Lisa, and Violet stood victorious, knowing that they had succeeded in their mission. The sinister caller was gone, and their town was safe once more. United by their shared experience, the trio continued to work together, dedicating their lives to investigating the unknown and protecting others from supernatural threats. Their friendship, forged in the fires of their battles with the darkness, became a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of courage, determination, and love in the face of overwhelming odds.